घर पे सब
जी
ठीक?
बिल्कुल बढ़िया सर।
हाय, thank you.
सर स्क्रीन कैसे शेयर करूं मैं? यू विल बी गिविंग मी द वो।
नहीं, सबको राइट्स हैं, एनीबॉडी कैन शेयर।
अच्छा, तो इसमें ऑप्शन कहाँ पर है? अच्छा, शेयर स्क्रीन तो शुरू करना ना सर?
या श्योर श्योर।
Good afternoon, everyone. So today's topic is Turn the Turner. And we'll be talking about the multi-specialty management of Turner syndrome, because Turner syndrome is not only endocrine or not only cardiac or not only neurocognitive. It's the holistic, management requiring all the specialties. So that is why I've invited our other specialists also today, who would be giving us our expert opinion about this condition as we talk about it. So I would like to start with a case. A 12-year-old girl presents with short stature. Her birth weight was normal, history of recurrent otitis media was present, and her scholastic performance was normal. There was no history of any systemic illness, and her mid-parental height of 165 centimeters. On examination, she has several moles. Her blood pressure is on the higher side. She is pre-pubertal with a height of 125 centimeters, weight of 27 kgs, and on examination, she has a low posterior hairline. So as you can see on the graph, when we compare with the mid-parental height, the child is less than third percentile. She is very short. So when we investigated the child, and as a rule, any girl whose height is less than third percentile, we do a karyotype for the girl, irrespective of whether she has any significant syndromic features present or not. So her thyroid profile showed the TSH of 22, and her karyotype was of 45X, 46XX. So when we plotted her on the Turner chart, Turner growth chart, her height actually turned out to be normal for a Turner girl actually. So that is why it is very important that we diagnose these children and we plot their height and weight on a Turner growth chart instead of plotting it on a normal or a general growth chart. So now, what is Turner syndrome? Turner syndrome results from a partial or complete loss of the second X chromosome in phenotypic females. It has a lot of other names also. It is the most common sex chromosome abnormality of human females, with a prevalence of about 1 in 2,000 to 2,500 live-born female children. And most common clinical findings may include lymphedema, cardiac anomalies, short stature, ovarian insufficiency, neurocognitive difficulties. But it has been found that other issues like renal, ophthalmic, thyroid, inflammatory bowel disease are also relatively common in Turner syndrome. So Turner syndrome actually can be diagnosed at any point of life, even in intrauterine life. The USG findings of increased nuchal translucency, cystic hygroma, left-sided obstructive cardiac anomaly in the fetus are highly suggestive of Turner syndrome. But it is very important that a karyotype of the child is done once the child is born, if the child has been diagnosed intrauterine. In a newborn or in infancy period, there are certain typical features which can help us recognize that the child might be Turner's. And most common presentation is at around this age, when the child presents to us with a short stature or delayed puberty. In them, you can find certain typical features, like you can see they have a low posterior hairline, they have a wide neck, shield-shaped thorax is present, and they have wide carrying angle. So these are the few features which can make us suspect that the child might be a Turner. Let me tell you, most of them that present with, they have very few features and they look like a completely normal female child most of the time. Now, how do we make the diagnosis in these kids? In the prenatal period, by amniocentesis or chorionic villus sampling can be done. but a mandatory karyotype postnatally has to be done. Neonatal screening, a karyotyping, FISH or molecular testing can give us the diagnosis. And infancy and beyond, karyotyping or FISH can be done. Now, when to suspect Turner syndrome and consider the child for karyotyping, it's very important. Now, any female with unexplained growth failure or pubertal delay, please think of Turner's. If there is a constellation of the lymphedema sequence present, like edema of the hands or feet, nuchal fold, neck webbing, low hairline, or characteristic facial features such as epicanthal folds, low set ears, micrognathia. This is how a typical Turner would look. You can see that they have lymphedema features. These are the epicanthal folds and cystic hygroma. Or if they have any left-sided cardiac anomalies, markedly elevated FSH if it is done, cubitus valgus, multiple pigmented nevi, bone abnormalities, chronic otitis media, learning disabilities, scoliosis. This is how scoliosis would look. So if any of these features are present, we should do a karyotype to rule out Turner's. Now, in a karyotyping, what we see is that 45X0. Now, this 45X is present monosomy X in 40 to 50%. Now, what they say is that if it's a pure monosomy, then the child might not survive. So, all 45X who survive, it is postulated that they have some normal or cryptic mosaicism for a normal cell line is present somewhere in the body, because we have not tested for all the cells. And what is also very important is to know what is not Turner syndrome. So if there is a small deletion of the long arm of X chromosome distal to XQ24, that is not Turner syndrome. So it is important to diagnose. Also, it is important to know which is not Turner's. Now, standard 20-cell karyotype is recommended and can detect 10% mosaicism with 95% confidence. If Y chromosome is present in a standard karyotype, it is very, very important that prophylactic gonadectomy is recommended due to increased risk of gonadoblastoma. And situations in which a formal karyotype should be repeated is the one where they have been diagnosed by a buccal swab only, or it was done very long back and they do not have the original report. Now, this is the most common manifestation of Turner syndrome, which we generally encounter. So these children, they have a kind of a stocky appearance, and they do not have growth hormone deficiency, but they have haploinsufficiency of the SHOX gene on the X chromosome. That is why they turn out to be short. And it is estimated that the girls who are not treated with growth hormone, Turner girls, they turn out to be about 20 centimeters shorter than their peers. And recombinant growth hormone has been licensed for use in Turner syndrome since 1988. And it has been recommended that it should be started early, as in all the conditions which require growth hormone, we say the treatment should be started as early as possible. So when should you suspect, or when should you think of starting growth hormone in Turner's, is that when the height falls below the 5th percentile for the age on a normal growth chart, or the height velocity is below the 15th percentile observed over 6 months.
Dr. Swati,
Anji.
Sorry to interrupt, but at what age growth hormone therapy should be started in these patients?
Yeah, that's what I said, ma'am, that it should be started early, around 4 to 6 years of age, actually, because that is the time that they start showing growth failure.
And if they have that lymphedema kind of a, lymphangiomas, all those kind of things, then also they can be started on growth hormone therapy?
Yes, ma'am, because the growth hormone does not only have advantage on the height, it also has an advantage on the lean body mass, on the bones and everything. So that is why it will help in that also. It will not increase the lymphedema.
And does it have any, interaction if the child is on therapies like sirolimus or tacrolimus?
No, ma'am, till now it has not been. I'll have to find out about that, because what has been seen is that if they have any cardiac anomalies and if they are on treatment for that, then it does not interfere.
No, not cardiac.
But about the tacrolimus and all, I have to find out, ma'am, because I haven't encountered any child Turner still yet who has been on this therapy. So I think because that is why if any of these treatments are going on, we generally do not give growth hormone unless it's absolutely necessary. So for that, I have to find out. But for the rest of the things, related to Turner's, it generally does not cause any interference. And a slightly higher dose is recommended for growth hormone in these kids, and in different countries, different doses are followed. And Yes,
sorry,
ma'am?
one more question. So, talking about growth hormone therapy, if suppose for some reasons we are not able to start growth hormone therapy as early as 4 to 6 years, then how, what is the age limit? Till what age do you think that it's high time they should be put on growth hormone
Yeah,
therapy?
that's what I'm coming to that, because most of the time they come very late only. Nobody starts at 4 to 6 years because they don't even come to know, or they don't even come to the doctor for that. So that is why most of them, they do start a little late only. So I'll be coming to that what can be done if they present at around 12 or 13 or 14 years of age. So what we see is that these children, they do have a little stocky appearance, that they're short and they are a little overweight. So that is why it is recommended that the dose should be calculated on the basis of body surface area rather than weight alone, so that we do not overdose the child. And the response depends on multiple factors, including the mid-parental height, age at which the growth hormone therapy is started, duration and dose of growth hormone therapy, and what is the baseline height of the child prior to initiation of the growth hormone therapy. And they say is obviously in all conditions as with growth hormone, that younger the age at treatment initiation and including at least 4 years of treatment prior to puberty is associated with the greater treatment effect. And growth hormone therapy does not seem to have a deleterious effect on blood pressure, left ventricular function, or aortic diameter. And these are the various studies which have also shown that the earlier the treatment is started, the better the response is, and the higher dose gives us a better response as compared to the doses which are used for growth hormone deficiency. Now, older child with poor predicted adult height, as ma'am had said, if the child presents to us late. So if you have a 10 to 12 years of age girl presenting to you with severe short stature, and she's unlikely to reach even the 5th percentile of the normal adult female, then what can be done in these kids? So what can we do is that along with the growth hormone, we can give them therapies like adjunctive oxandrolone, or we can delay the pubertal induction in these kids. So in what has the studies have shown that even if you at such a late age, even then if you give growth hormone to these children along with these adjunctive therapies, then also they have some beneficial effect in their final adult height. So that is why whatever age they present with, if the bones have not fused, then a trial of growth hormone should be definitely given in these children. So oxandrolone is a non-aromatizable androgen, and which prevents the progressions of the bones, and it gives us some little extra time along with the growth hormone to give little bit extra height to the child. And delayed pubertal induction, as in these kids, they also have pubertal insufficiency and require hormone replacement therapy, which is mostly started at around 11 to 12 years of age. So in these kids, if we do not want to give oxandrolone, we can delay the pubertal induction in these children to up to 14 years of age and keep on giving growth hormone therapy so that we can give them some little extra time to grow.
Dr. Swati, when do you call them delayed puberty? Because as it is, these patients, they will have delayed puberty.
Yes, sir. So the normal definition,
by definition,
which is
your
followed...
delayed puberty will be beyond 13 years, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you want to delay by another 1 year?
Yeah, 1 to 2 years, depending. And that is why, sir, 14 years, we can actually calculate by bone age also,
So
rather than the chronological age.
As it is, these patients, they have delayed puberty.
Yeah. So they have delayed puberty, so they would not start the puberty on their own. So when we are giving growth hormone and we have started growth hormone a little late, so then we can delay it a little bit more. Yes, okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So height should be monitored every 3 to 4 months during therapy, and Turner syndrome growth chart should be used. IGF-1 monitoring should be done, and monitoring for other potential side effects of growth hormone therapy should also be done. And growth hormone can be discontinued after linear growth is complete, that is bone age of approximately 13.5 to 14 years, or if the height velocity is less than 2 centimeters per year, because then it is not giving us any additional benefit. Now, ovarian insufficiency, Turner syndrome is usually accompanied by hypergonadotrophic hypogonadism, and either they can present with not starting puberty at all, or they can present with some signs of puberty with primary or secondary amenorrhea. And spontaneous puberty has also been reported. Even regular menstrual cycles have also been reported in Turner syndrome. And why we need hormone replacement therapy in these kids is that first for induction of puberty, and later for maintaining the secondary sexual characters, for the peak bone mass, and for the normalizing the uterine growth. And it is important that HRT is given slowly and over a prolonged period of time for normal growth and development of the secondary sexual characters. And it is very important to confirm hypergonadotrophic hypogonadism prior to pubertal induction. So there is a case I want to discuss, which I had seen recently. A 14-year, 8-month-old, she had not attained menarche, had adrenarche or pubic and axillary hair for 2 years, and thelarche was present for 6 months. Normal scholastic performance, height of 145 centimeters, weight of 47.2 kg. As the mid-parental height was only 150.2 centimeters, so she was okay for the family. Mother's menarche was also at the age of 15 years. So we thought that, we can wait and watch as she's already into puberty. She had a stocky appearance with the Tanner stage breast 4 and pubic hair 5. And on investigations, the LH, FSH, estradiol were well into pubertal range. FSH was not very high. Thyroid profile was normal. Bone age of 13 years, 6 months, and USG pelvis showed normal uterus with the endometrial lining of 8.3 millimeters. And as they say, the endometrial lining is more than 5 millimeters. You can say that it's adequate for the periods. Now she was lost to follow up to us for 2 years. Then she presented again with, she had attained menarche and had irregular periods, was on progesterone, and she would not get periods without medication. Whenever she would take progesterone, she would get periods, otherwise she would not. PCOD workup was done, which was normal. So that is why we were wondering that what is wrong with this child and why is she not getting periods. So we just did a karyotype and she turned out to be a mosaic Turner. So you can see that they can present at any time of their puberty, at any point of time of their life, and we should be vigilant to think about Turner. And estradiol is started in a slow dose and increased gradually. And progesterone is added once withdrawal bleeding is there or after about 2 years of estrogen therapy, because if there is an unopposed estrogen action, it can lead to endometrial carcinoma later on. So progesterone is important. And in young mosaic Turner women with persistent ovarian function, oocyte cryopreservation as a possible fertility preservation option should be told to the parents. Metabolic effects, again, it's individuals with Turner have a higher BMI, higher body fat percentage, larger waist circumference, and lower lean body mass as compared to their peers, and have increased risk of development of several autoimmune disorders like thyroid disorders, celiac disease, JRA, inflammatory bowel disease. Also, they have an increased risk of developing type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Now, the most common and the most important manifestation is a cardiovascular, which can be life-threatening. If Dr. Gaurav is there with us, sir, can you tell us about some experience of yours with Turner syndrome, if you have encountered, or what should we look for?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir.
Although I have not seen so much cases of Turner syndrome, I encountered 1 or 2 when I was in the escort. The most common problem that we encounter in cardiovascular system in cases of Turner is bicuspid aortic valve and coarctation of aorta. The difference in these type of patients as compared to others, the aorta is very fragile in this subset, and whenever we are planning for any intervention on coarctation of aorta, then we have to be very careful for the rupture of aorta while conducting balloon dilatation of coarctation. So we generally prefer stenting, covered stenting of the coarctation of aorta. Otherwise, the most common is bicuspid aortic valve and coarctation of aorta. Rest, others are very rare.
Thank you, sir. So that is why the new guidelines, they recommend that transthoracic echocardiogram and pediatric cardiology follow-up should be done every 5 years, 1 to 2 years, or 6 months to 1 year, depending upon the Z-score of the aorta. Yes. And the participation in sports is restricted to low and moderate static and dynamic activities in moderate risk category, and competitive sports should be avoided. So this is the chart in the latest guidelines for the management of Turner syndrome about the cardiology exam and how they should be monitored. And now the next, the neurocognition, which is also very important. And if we have Dr. Shambhavi Seth with us, ma'am, can you please tell us about it, what your experience has been?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Swati. So I think it will be seldom a Turner would present as a primary neurodevelopmental problem. So more commonly, the Turner experience which I have not seen too many. I have seen a Turner girl with the problem of poor scholastic performance. And I believe learning disability or poor school performance is one of the very common features which we have in neurocognition. Almost 60 to 70% of them can have a learning disability. Though low IQ or intellectual disability is not very common, most of them would have a normal IQ. And recently, actually, I did some research on Turner and wrote a chapter for a neurodevelopmental pediatric journal. So where it showed almost 6% would have intellectual disability. And if we talk about learning disability also, these children, these girls are mostly good in verbal skills, but their non-verbal skills, when we talk about visual spatial relationships, or like if we give them a direction and ask them to reach there, they will get confused. Their handwriting may not be very proper. Then their executive functioning is not very good. They may also have a good number of them would have ADHD or behavioral problems. So that's the neurocognitive profile which is described for Turner's.
Thank you so much, ma'am. What has frequently been found is that they have difficulty in encoding social cues and behaving appropriately in social situations. So this is one of the common things that we can ask parents if a short girl presents to us in our OPD, that if she has, so that we can guide them to have a neurocognitive assessment done. And also it has been recommended that children with Turner be screened annually for development and behavioral issues and undergo neuropsychiatric testing at major transitional ages, that is whenever they are entering preschool, school and high school. Dr. Deepak, I think you have joined us. And sir, can you please tell us about the gastrointestinal involvement in Turner's, if you have encountered any, or what should be looked for?
Hi. Basically, these kids are more prone for having inflammatory bowel disease. So ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease is little more common in Turner patients as compared to the general population. And I think they are more prone for some gastrointestinal hemangiomas also. So sometimes they can present with occult GI bleed, and I think these two things are more common in Turner syndrome patients.
Okay. So if they have problems of abdominal pain, weight loss, then inflammatory bowel disease, these things should be thought of rather than delaying it.
We should keep this in mind that whenever such kids present with unexplained anemia, we should always think of occult GI blood loss or any GI bleed, and keep a low threshold evaluating such patients.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, sir. So as you can see that these kids can have multiple organ involvement like kidney, GI, even orthopedic, and the ENT. They can have sensorineural hearing loss, medullary infections, ophthalmic, dental, dermatologic, thyroid. So what is important in these kids is that if you diagnose a Turner's, then this is what the evaluation they should have, yearly evaluation, or after, as they have said that alkaline phosphatase aminotransferase should be done annually after 10 years of age, HbA1c after 10 years of age. So this is a multi-speciality disease actually, which requires a comprehensive management of the child by all the specialties. So if we have a Turner's child, then actually we should have a Turner's clinic actually, where these children can come and they can be evaluated by all the specialists simultaneously. The transition to adult care is also very important because obesity, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, hyperlipidemia, comorbidities in adult women with Turner's and require repeat screening. Also, they require Dexafan every 5 years and continued estrogen supplementation till menopausal age. They have psychosocial issues, career, interpersonal relationships, contraception, fertility options, which require counseling and support. Now, what they say is that if this is such a disease which can have implication at almost every point of life, then why is newborn screening not mandatory for Turner's as they are being mandatory for other diseases like CAH or thyroid? So the underdiagnosis and delayed diagnosis is common. What they say is that early detection, if there's a serious malformation, it can help the child and prevent complications. Early diagnosis facilitates prevention or remediation of growth failure, hearing problems, learning difficulties, and it may be possible to, cryopreservation so that it can later on in infertility, they would have some option. But newborn screening will also identify sex chromosome abnormalities of no clinical consequence in some phenotypically normal individuals. So the risk must be weighed against the benefit of early detection and other X chromosome disorders. So that is why the parents should be counseled properly before doing the test and also while interpreting the result of the karyotype. So the points to remember is that any girl with height less than 5th percentile or growth failure, please rule out Turner syndrome. Look for associated features, other organ involvement, timely initiation of growth hormone and hormone replacement therapy, regular screening for other organ involvement, which requires teamwork, motivation and support to the child and family. And given the complexity of a Turner's diagnosis and treatment, the diagnosis needs to be clearly communicated to the parents from the beginning and also to the child, depending on her age and developmental stage. And earlier the diagnosis is communicated, the better is the outcome for the girl's future quality of life and self-esteem. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Swati. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
Brimming with confidence. I think you recently presented this somewhere else.
And that's why I realized that we have all the specialists in our department and we never discuss this kind of a thing. Yes. So we can actually have a Turner's clinic once the things get better.
Once you have enough patients, actually it is a highly underdiagnosed and so
exactly,
many
sir. That is why we say we never have enough patients.
They get married, they remain infertile, and they are never diagnosed.
Yes, sir.
So that is a problem which I think is never investigated or thought about.
Yes, that is why in our practice, any girl who is less than 3rd percentile, irrespective of the features, we get a karyotype done.
Good.
So I think that should be the practice, and then further evaluation and cardiac and everything becomes very important.
Good. Thank you very much. Nice presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Crisp and to the point, and you involved a lot of people and answered your queries.
I'm very grateful that they all agreed to come actually on such a short notice. I messaged them today only. So
some of them were caught unawares. They were not prepared. We'll get them.
I had messaged all of them and asked their permission first that if they would be ready to contribute, and they were all very helpful actually.
Chalo, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Vipul, what about Chandrika's presentation? Uska kya hua? She's not well, na? Abhi to recover
admit hai, sir.
Change. अच्छा. ठीक है.
Hello.
Swati, thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
डॉक्टर रचना बड़े स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चन पूछ रही थी. डिड शी हैव अ पेशेंट इन हर माइंड? रचना है वहां पे? टैक्रिलेमस कौन सा पेशेंट ले रहा होता है टर्नर्स का?